Well, I'm here today with Simon. Simon is the treasurer of Queen's Road Baptist Church, part of our finance team, and we're just going to have a bit of a catch-up about where we are with financial matters at this interesting time. So, Simon, thank you for being interviewed today.
No problem.
We are in a very interesting time. It must have been quite an interesting time to be a church treasurer.
It certainly has been interesting. Firstly, we all of a sudden saw the loss of all of our rental income. We were very concerned whether we would lose a lot of our Sunday giving, the basket income.
Yeah.
We had staff that were no longer had a function in the church for a while because we had no rentals going on. We had loan repayments that needed to be made,
of course, yeah.
and a number of other things we needed to get on top of over the last few months. So yes, it's been a particularly interesting time.
The rental income, what kind of money would we be talking about?
£70,000 to £80,000 a year.
Which is pretty much gone at this time. Yeah. So certainly makes things interesting. We're heading for budget time. You guys, the finance team, who's in your finance team?
So Janet is our bookkeeper. Janet's brilliant, and I have huge confidence in what she does. She's really proactive. We also have Roy Corker, who pretty much anyone who's been at Queen's Road in the last 20 years will know. Roy's an ex-treasurer, but is also an accountant. So with the two of them on team, I feel very confident. We have some brilliant discussions, but when we're putting something together and we're giving some numbers, I feel confident that they've been checked and questioned and by two really, really competent people.
That's great. Yeah. So, Simon, budgeting is obviously a critical part of taking care of the finances of an organisation like us. How are you going about the budgeting process this year? What does that look like?
Okay, so we've looked at what we would spend in a typical year, and we look at what we predict we may need to spend moving forward. We look at our giving in a typical year. And we've also this year got the complication of not quite knowing whether someone is going to be continuing with their increased giving or with their COVID giving. And so we put all of that in the mix and try and make the figures work with lots of questions. How much maintenance are we going to need to do on the church? Is anything going to break? Yeah. We've obviously got to have a provision in case something does, and pray that nothing does.
And the process for you, it's not just a finance team saying, here's the budget.
No, sorry. Finance team get the figures together. Yeah. We try and work out what we feel looks sensible, bearing in mind some of the things that we know that the church and leadership want us to include in there. We then, I'll present that to the diaconate, who get to ask lots of questions, get to put in other things that they may want to see in a budget. That comes back to the finance team to work out, well, how could that work? Goes back to the diaconate for a second meeting. And then if that's then agreed, that will then be presented back to the church. For the church to agree with the recommendation of the leadership.
Now, normally that would happen up here in the auditorium with a gathered church meeting, and this year that's not going to be possible. So the budget will probably be presented on camera at some stage, and we'll obviously let the church let people know how that's going to work. So where are we at the moment? How are you feeling about these next months as we go in thinking about our financial situation? Okay,
so because of the allowances from the government, furloughs, the BU being generous to allow us to have a loan repayment holiday, and the amazing generosity of the church, our bank account at the moment is in a good place. Everyone will know that we always aim to have that 60k in the bank, or £60,000. That's a quarter of our yearly expenses. So that's felt that that's a sensible amount that means that we're not all of a sudden pushing panic buttons. We have more than that right now, so that's good. So we have a balance of around £80,000.
Okay.
If we look forward for the rest of this year, we would expect that to be pretty steady. We're still on a loan repayment holiday. We're really hoping we don't have any additional costs. And for this year, we have almost completed our mission payments. The initial budget, looking forward into next year, is looking like, from a cash point of view, we're likely to go backwards by about £30,000.
Through the whole year.
Through the whole of the year.
Yeah.
We've tried to put sensible allowances in without overcooking it, and that's where it's been brilliant to work with Janet and Roy. We work together to try to find what we all feel feels right, but no promises.
No promises. From, I think, back in, was it April, May, the church responded generously and stepped up in the giving. I guess we really need that to continue, and maybe if people could relook again and see if they could help us, because looking into next year, was it about 3,000 a month, the deficit?
At this moment, we're predicting just over £3,000, just under £3,000 a month. So it's about £33,000 is what we're thinking.
Yeah. So you're feeling, under the circumstances, you're feeling pretty positive, but we need to keep on being generous if we can. And also,
Absolutely.
I guess it would be really helpful if people could communicate if they have given a little bit more, or if they think their finance situation is going to change in the near future, if they could let perhaps the finance team know best to go to Janet. Would that be helpful?
We're actually going to be sending out a letter to people within the congregation, and we realise that there are people that may be giving that aren't in our congregation and we don't know who they are. But we're going to be writing to people to let them know what the situation is, but also to ask if they can give us an indication as to where they think things might be next year.
Yeah.
Because if people have been giving an amount, and then as I said, they're giving a COVID amount beside that, if they plan to continue to give that through 2021, then we can budget to predict that. Right now, we're unable to do that.
Yeah.
And therefore, our giving figures perhaps are down from where they could be. But on the other side, we may have people that may be predicting they're not going to be able to do that next year, and that would be great to know as well, as soon as possible, so that as a church, we and as finance team, we're able to plan as well as we possibly can.
We're obviously part of the Baptist Union, part of that family. How you've been chatting to them, I know, haven't you, about potential support should we ever need it? What's the situation there?
Yeah, so I reached out to them back in April, and we started having discussions about the potential need to extend our loan or to try to gain another loan, because at the time it was looking like the deficit was going to hit us sooner rather than later, and we didn't have that headroom above our required reserves. And so in principle, I think we would have been able to have got a loan, and we thought we were probably going to be pushing the button on that a couple of months ago. But because of the giving and because of the stability in our finances, we've been able to hold off doing that.
Okay. Yeah.
That would be a potential option next year if giving drops or expenses go up or whatever happens. Right now, we feel that we would probably be ending the year with a potentially manageable amount of money in the bank, and hopefully we will see an increase, one in giving, but two in rental income, and with lots of prayer, hopefully we won't see too much maintenance.
Yes.
I know that people may have some questions following this interview.
Yeah.
And therefore, if people do, if they could email finance@qrbc.net with those questions,
it's coming up on the screen here.
Then Janet will be able to collate those and we'll try and pull them together into sort of frequently asked questions type scenario.
Brilliant.
And then put that out possibly on the church website, or we'll find a way of communicating that with everyone.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time, and be assured that this community of faith prays for you guys at this tough time and interesting time. And thank you very much.
Thank you.